Hey guys, welcome back to another podcast, and this is my second podcast today, and I'll be talking about the Jets' victory over the Browns this past weekend, 31-30 versus the Browns. So, I have my dad back again here today to talk a little bit more about the victory.
Thank you for having me on again, Tyler. I appreciate it. Happy to be back, and happy to be back after a victory. We don't get those too often as Jet fans. So thought we'd talk a little bit about this week. You asked me a lot of questions, so now I'm going to ask you a couple questions so that you can answer as well, and I'm not talking too much here. So how did you like the way that Joe Flacco came back after the first week as one of my duds, but this week coming back and really, really playing well? How do you think he did?
I think Joe Flacco played well. He was 26 for 44 for 307 yards and 4 touchdowns. He really got guys open in open space, and the offensive line was more protective, and he only had 2 sacks on him. The defenders only had 2 sacks on him.
He had a QB rating of 110, which was a lot better than last week. I thought he did a good job of managing the game. And I know last week I talked a little bit about him being, really not too mobile. But yesterday, on Sunday, he did get out of the pocket a little bit. He stepped up in the pocket. His offensive line gave him a little bit of a cushion too. And I thought he didn't do anything flashy or fancy, but he managed the game well and put him in a position to win, which was great. Now, the only quarterback that played in that game that had a better passer rating was our punter. Our punter, Braden Mann, had that 4th and 1 play where he threw the ball 17 yards, so he was 1 for 1. He had a passer rating of 118. Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. The Jets set the tone in the beginning of that game. They were pulling out all the stops there. Hopefully it's not going to be the same old Jets. But yeah, I thought you're right. Flacco managed the game pretty well and did a nice job. Nice comeback game from last week.
So, how did you like the way Garrett Wilson played?
Garrett Wilson, I thought, played really, really well. Obviously, he had the 2 touchdowns, and one of them being the one at the end of the game, which ultimately tied the game. But he had 8 receptions for 102 yards, a long of 31. He had 14 targets, so there were 6 passes he did not catch. I know a couple were off target, a couple were knocked down. One thing that you're not going to see in the stat line was, I think it was towards the middle to late of the third quarter, he took a pretty good shot to the back, a helmet to the back of the spine just above his butt. And he went down, and the trainers had to come out and get him, and he looked like he was pretty hurt. But midway through the fourth, all of a sudden you saw him back out there. So the thing that shows me, and we talked about it when we were watching the game, is this kid's hungry. He very easily could have sat out and said, I'm hurt, I don't want to play. But he's a gamer. He went back out there and he played tremendous. Played with a lot of passion, a lot of fire, and he was in a tough environment, playing in Cleveland with the dog pound there, and ultimately being down by 13 points with under 2 minutes left to still keep your head in the game and come back and win is monumental. But ultimately, I thought he played really, really well.
Okay.
So I got a question for you. We talked about Braden Mann just before. How did you think he did this week as opposed to the first week as far as punting and playing field position?
So, he at least got the punts in bounds, not like last week where he punted it all the way out of bounds.
He had a shankopotamus last week, but this week he did well.
And this week, a man had 4 punts for 189 yards.
It's like an average of like 47, so that's pretty good. Anything above 45, 50, and sometimes, we're at midfield, so he can't really get a Bomberooski off. He tries to pin him within the 10. So you thought he had a pretty good game. What did you think about the fake punt? Threw the ball pretty well, huh?
Yeah. And his long was 50 yards. Okay, so I have a question for you. What made the Jets come all the way back? How did you like the way Ashton Davis's interception? How did you like it?
Well, I mean, being a Jet fan for 44 years, you're lucky. You've only been a Jet fan for 12 years, so you don't know the misery that most Jet fans experience on a perpetual basis. But let me set the scene here. We're at our own 34. There's a minute and 35 left. We have no timeouts left, and we're down 13. The Jets somehow miraculously find Corey Davis down the right sideline. He breaks free. There's definitely miscommunication between the linebackers and the safeties, and he breaks free for a touchdown. So you're like, all right, the Jets are now down. They're down one score, but it's the Jets. There's no way we're going to come back and win. So then all of a sudden, we hit the extra point, which was not a gimme from the previous week, as we all saw. And all of a sudden, we're down one possession. So we're like, all right, all we need is an onside kick. Now, with the NFL changing the rules to the onside kick, where the kicking team is not able to run up, it's really limited the team that's kicking the opportunity to get the ball back. There's not that many successful onside kicks. Well, our kicker, Zerline, sets up like he's going to kick the ball to the right side and comes back to the left, hits it to the sideline, and one of our forgive me, I don't recall his name, but he crushed the guy, kept the ball in bounds, and the Jets get the ball back. So, unfortunately, again, being a pessimistic Jet fan, we're like, all right, well, we got the ball back, but now we got to go all the way down and score. Well, we move the ball. Flacco moves the ball, moves it down, and all of a sudden, there's just 22 seconds left, and Garrett Wilson slides to the middle and gets a perfect pass right to the middle for a touchdown. All we have to do is kick the extra point. Jets kick the extra point. Now, all of a sudden, we're up by 1 point, 31-30, and there's 20-something seconds left. Our defense has to come back, and Jacoby Brissett scrambles for about 17, 20 yards. Then they're only about 15 yards away from being in field goal range. And you called it. We're watching the game, and ultimately you said, here comes interception. Here comes interception. And like a prophet, T, you got it right. And he was able to, was it Davis, correct?
Yeah.
Davis was able to catch the ball, and he didn't try to do too much with it. He just slid down, and the Jets got a miraculous win. So there's some stats. This was the first time in 2,229 games where a team trailing by 13 or more with under 2 minutes won the game. The last time that happened was in 2001, the Bears versus the Browns. So we witnessed basically history. 21 years and 2,229 games, the Jets did something in the positive and the affirmation, which was just remarkable. I don't think I screamed that loud in a long, long time. And another crazy stat, too. The Mets, the Yankees, the Jets, and the Giants all won for the first time together since 2009. So that was 13 years ago. So some pretty crazy stats. It was pretty monumental. And also some of the other games that we saw Miami come back against the Ravens. We saw the Cardinals game was a huge comeback as well.
Versus the Raiders.
Right. And then there was one other comeback win. So a pretty crazy NFL Sunday for week 2. I'm sure the NFL's excited about the way that those games ultimately went down. So, got another question for you. C.J. Mosley had a pretty well-played game. Tell me a little bit more about his performance and the defense.
I think C.J. Mosley played well. He had 7 total tackles, 3 solo, and 1 TFL. He played well. He shut down the running backs to only 130 140 yards on the ground and only 30 carries for that. But Nick Chubb just blew him by for 3 touchdowns. And that was pretty impressive. But Nick Chubb is a veteran, and
Nick Chubb's the real deal. Now, when we're watching the game, and they're down within the red zone, and this is right before the 2-minute warning, and he busts out to the left and goes towards the sideline. I'm saying to myself, this guy's just going to stay down and stay in bounds and try and run the clock. They would have been in victory formation. We had no timeouts. It was under the 2-minute warning, and for some reason, he goes in and he scores. Now, obviously, that you think they're going to go up by 14, but he misses the extra point. He goes up by 13. But no one in their right mind ever thought the Jets were going to come back. But in retrospect, when you think back at that play, if he just slid down in bounds, the Jets would have lost. They would have won the game. But I don't know if he was trying to pad stats or whatever the case may be, or maybe just had a brain fart. But the bottom line is that really opened the door for the Jets to come back for that miracle win. So last week we did studs and duds. Let me first start off by asking you, who do you think your stud was?
Garrett Wilson.
All right, tell me. So we talked a little bit about Garrett Wilson, rookie, 2 touchdowns, came back after that injury. What else? What was his total amount that he had? He had 100 and something, right?
102 and 8 receptions so he played well.
I thought he did play well too. How about your duds?
My dud was
Jet stud.
Linebackers had a miserable game because the running backs just had open holes to get through.
So that's who's that? Quincy Williams and C.J. Mosley, huh?
Yeah.
Are the linebackers? All right. I would say, for me, my stud, obviously Garrett Wilson. You made a good selection there, but I'm gonna eat a little humble pie. I'm gonna say Flacco. Flacco, again, 307 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Managed the game pretty well. He still threw the ball a ton of times. I think last week he threw the ball 59 times. This time 44. But ultimately had a game. He was a game manager. I think at this stage of his career, he's not going to do anything flashy. He's not going to be. He's definitely not going to be mistaken for an agile quarterback. But did what he needed to do to put his team in a position to win. And I guess when you're starting a veteran quarterback like him, that's really what you expect. As far as duds, I would say our defensive line. I think our defensive line put some pressure on Jacoby Brissett, but he really had a decent game too. He was 22 for 27, 229 yards, 1 touchdown, did have that interception at the end. But what I'm thinking is, he doesn't have to throw the ball that much because he's got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, running the ball left and right. But he also, Jacoby also managed to run the ball for 6 times for a total of 43 yards. So Quentin Williams did not. I think he had a half a sack, and I think he only had one total tackle. Guys that really, usually do pretty well. Quentin Williams, he had 4 total tackles. 3 were solo, a half a sack. Nate Shepard only had one tackle. I just don't think they made it too difficult for Jacoby. I thought they could have put more pressure on him. They could have rushed him. They could have gotten some hands to his face, and they just were not able to get to the quarterback. So they were my dud.
Okay. So Jacoby also, the Jets only had 1 sack on Jacoby, and Jacoby's passer rating was 98%.
So looking forward to next week, the Jets play
Bengals. Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase.
Right. Now, how do you feel about that? First of all, it's a home game. So we're going to be able to tailgate, which is going to be cool. I do have something on Saturday into Sunday morning, so we're not going to do the full tailgate experience, but I'll try and get back as quick as I can so we can hang out in the parking lot, hang out for a little bit. What do you think our chances are against the Bengals?
At least we have a better record than the Bengals after the Bengals made it all the way to the Super Bowl and were AFC champions last year. They're 0-2 this year after losing to the Cowboys last week. 20-17 game-winning field goal Cowboys. But Jamar Chase will be a hard guy to defend because he's just, with his gritty and everything, he could break free.
Yeah, and I think one thing that scares me about the Bengals being 0-2, they're obviously a much better team than their record is showing, and they're due for a win. I just hope they don't have to pick it up in Week 3 against our Jets. So it will be difficult. Joe Burrow is obviously proven himself to be a good quarterback in this league. It really hasn't manifested into wins in the first two, but I think everyone's a little rusty from only having the 3 preseason games and not playing a lot. So we'll see where the Jets could go. I mean, it's a home game, so I think our fans really have to be loud and make it a hostile environment for the opposition to play. Have to get our jet chance, our defensive chance, and on third downs we got to get up on our feet and make it uncomfortable. I think our team thrives off of the atmosphere, and being home, we need to give them that home field advantage. And listen, right now we're 1-1. What's our AFC records looking like? Who's the cream of the crop in the AFC?
Bills.
Bills just look unbelievable. They absolutely crushed last night.
And also the Dolphins too. They're undefeated too.
Dolphins are undefeated. Tua had six touchdowns. They came back from a miraculous comeback against the Ravens, and then the Jets and the Patriots sit at 1-1. Patriots were able to outlast the Steelers the other day. I think it was 17-13. 17-14. Would have been nice to see them get a loss. It would have been nice to see Miami lose too. But we're right in the thick of things. I mean, one more week, just like the Jets normally do. They, just when you think you're out, they suck you back in. So we're hoping that the Jets, if they could somehow pull out a win on Sunday, we'd be 2-1 and sitting pretty, moving forward to the meat and potatoes of the heart of our league, the heart of our season coming up. So this is a very pivotal game for the Jets. I know Coach Saleh mentioned he was taking receipts for people that were all writing off the Jets. So I think that gave his team a little bit of motivation. What do you think?
Yeah.
I think so too. So any last thoughts on the Jets' upcoming game, previous game, upcoming season games you're looking forward to the Jets playing?
Nope, but the Jets also play after the Bengals, the Steelers, so that's kind of an easy, hard game at the same time.
Not easy to go over to Pittsburgh, though, and play with the terrible towels. I know our friend the P-Cars are going to be going over there they have tickets to the Steelers game, Steelers-Jets. So we'll be rooting at home. I'm sure they'll be rooting for their team in Pennsylvania. But 2 games that I would by no means say are easily winnable, but are also games that I don't think we're out of it. So the next 2 weeks are going to be a really, really pivotal point of our season, and it's a really still early in the season, but you don't want to go down 1-2. If you're able to get a win and go 2-1 and get a 2-game winning streak and try and ride that into Pittsburgh, Trubinsky did not look totally polished, and he's still struggling a little bit. So we might be catching Pittsburgh at the right time. But again, we do not want to look past an 0-2 Bengals team. They're ready to play. So we'll see how it ultimately goes.
Okay, thank you for joining me today again, Dad.
Sure.
And thank you guys for listening to my New York Jets recap and upcoming game preview. So thank you guys for joining me to listen to me talk about the Jets. Thank you.